Welcome to the show, everybody. Joseph Robert, the fantasy football counselor, in here online with Tom Santanello. We're talking fantasy football wide receiver sleepers, some deeper sleepers you may want to consider. What's going on, Tom Santanello?
What's going on, Joe?
Tom, excited to have you on. I don't like the background picture there. You've got, Odell's only famous catch there that made him who he is. I don't like it. Why do you have Odell up in the background?
Oh, I got a lot more than that. Just some autographs, some memorabilia. I just got a bunch of stuff. I'll rotate it for you. I got some other options. I got Antonio Brown, your favorite player, maybe.
Oh, no. The divas. Listen, Tom, we're talking sleepers. I want to do a disclaimer here. By no way, shape, or form are we endorsing these players for fantasy football to draft them. I may mention some guys I like, but we want to talk about some guys that could take a step up this year that are deep sleepers. No one's talking about it for fantasy, but also in reality, some guys like Alan Lazard, Hunter Renfro, Corey Davis, names that people are, off their radar. But I want to kind of have an open discussion here about these wide receivers because, again, some of them could take a step up and be really fantasy relevant, Tom. So you've got a good list there. Let's just discuss it.
Let's go.
Who do you got first?
You want me to go first? One name that sticks out to me is Preston Williams of the Dolphins. I think he was an undrafted rookie last year. He was undrafted and he surprised some people, played well the first half of the season. They didn't have any bright spots, I would say, on that team at all. But right. I think he did well, and I think he's a guy. I know he had a really strong training camp from people I talked to last year, and I really like him. If he can prove he's healthy, I know he had some type of, knee injury, but I like him. I really like him. On that team, I think it was with Devontae Parker. He had a breakout year last year. Finally, 5 years or so into his career. So I don't know. I think it depends with the quarterback situation there, but I really like him. I think this kid will be there for a few years, at least in Miami, and be at least the number 2 there.
Yeah, I think he only played 8 games, torn ACL. He did look okay when he first came out. 60 targets last year, 32 receptions, 3 touchdowns. I'm not too excited he's on Miami. The ceiling is there for anybody, especially with Tua coming in. They made some improvements on that offense, but are you really sold on a Miami player right now? Again, not a guy I'm targeting, but he is on a lot of people's radar. He's got that height, right? What is he, like 6'5", 218? He's a big boy. There's a ceiling there. I definitely see the upside. Deep sleeper. I'm not considering him on my roster right now. Just too much uncertainty for me, but definitely worth mentioning and talking about, making you guys aware. This is more of an awareness show. We want to raise the awareness about these players. So not only for fantasy, but in reality, so you can watch them.
If he kept up that pace, he would have had just as good of a rookie season as any other wide receiver, pretty much. So I think he's gonna. If he keeps up that pace, if he kept up that pace over 16 games, you probably would have improved unless he hit the rookie wall. But I actually like him.
Yeah,
he's one of the more talented guys we're talking about today. 6'5" guys, usually they struggle a little bit too, especially at that height, getting off the line, and they're a little raw. So maybe that's why he went undrafted. I don't know much about him in college. But Colorado State puts out some. I think he went to Colorado State, right?
Yeah.
They put out some good wide receivers. A couple good wide receivers the last few years. I think Gallup went there from the Cowboys. I think Higgins went there. They got another kid next year, Warren Jackson. They got some players.
Right. All right, let's move on here. Another guy you want to keep on your radar. I guess I'll go here. In no particular order, you got the list there anyway. But I want to talk about this guy because I don't want to forget about him. He's on my brain right now. Alan Lazard, 52 targets, 35 receptions, 3 touchdowns. Nothing crazy. He only played 12 games, started to get into the groove, mid to late season, and then had a couple breakout games. Marquise Valdez-Scantling, obviously not the answer there. We thought the heat step up was between him and Allison, and out of nowhere comes Alan Lazard. What do you think of this kid? 6'5", again, another 6'5" big boy going into his second season. And another good highlight with this guy is the Packers didn't draft another wide receiver. With this deep wide receiver class, they went quarterback and running back. They got Dillon, they got Love in the first 2 rounds. And Alan Lazard, man, I think this is huge. I think this is a huge sleeper that this guy actually would put on my bench. What are your thoughts on this guy's talent?
I think his talent is limited. I think opportunity is there, though. I think he's more of a story than a talent. But like you said, they didn't draft anybody. They don't have anybody else. Rodgers always finds those guys to put up some big games. I don't think he's as good as the hype he's getting, if he's, how much hype he is getting. You know, he didn't get any starts I think he got a few starts last year in the 16 games he played. But I don't know. I'm not super excited on him. I think there's a chance if I think they're going to lean on the run a little bit this year more than in the past. So I'm not totally sold on him as far as the other guys on my list, but I do see some upside in the opportunity, like you said, about not having many other options there.
The problem is with Rodgers, though, Tom, as you know, he's going to be very particular. So if Lazard drops the ball or the chemistry isn't there, he's just not going to gravitate to him. So he's really got to basically kiss Rodgers' ass, I think, for him to succeed.
Yeah, and who knows what kind of tension's going to be there in Green Bay this year, you know, with the draft and Rodgers replacement. I don't know. I see Green Bay taking, you know, sometimes those guys, they take a step up, they win 13 games, but I don't see it for them this year. You know, Rodgers, you know, puts it on his back, but I see them taking a step down, him being out of the Packers the following year.
All right, let's continue on. Lazard, a guy you get super late. The upside is there, but again, the opportunity looks good, but will he get the volume? That's the big question.
Yeah. I'm going to go with an interesting guy for you. This guy, if healthy, is a sleeper. It's a big if. John Ross, Cincinnati, top 10 talent. Right. He's a big play guy, averaged 18.1 yards per reception last year, had some really nice explosive plays. I think, listen, health is his concern. If he's healthy, he's going to put up 1,000 yards, I think, in that offense. AJ Green's back this year, but I think this is the guy for them to win more than 3-4 games. I mean, it sounds sorry saying, but he's the guy who's going to get that explosiveness in this offense. It's not AJ Green. It's not T. Higgins as the rookie. It's this guy. And I actually like him if healthy.
You're digging deep. You're really digging deep here, but I see the upside. I see the ceiling. There's just way too much. Higgins and Green are there, and same with Boyd. I mean, this guy, going into his 4th season, all I got to tell you, and I think it's maybe part of the offense, but this is one of those years to wow me, Tom. And guess what? I'm not wowed. He's one of those guys. I don't see him getting enough volume to make him fantasy relevant. Just not on my radar at all. But a deep, deep sleeper. If you're in a 14 or 16 man league and you need a receiver late, why not? Right?
If he plays, listen, he had 7 TDs in 13 games in his second year. His first year, he barely played a game or two. His last year, he played 8 games, had 500 yards, 3 TDs. I just think, you know, him, another one, he plays 16 games, 1,000 yards. 5 to 10 TDs. I think he's that type of player. If healthy, he has explosiveness, which is something you cannot teach.
Right.
And is important.
Right. All right. Let's move on here. Who else do you got?
Want me to go?
You just keep going. You got the whole list, so just keep rhyming them off.
You know, I'm going to go with a guy who put on a good 5 games last year at the 6 games at the end of the season, Brashad Perryman for the Jets.
Wow. You're digging deep here.
I mean, who else do they have?
Nobody.
And they're going to throw the ball. I mean, they're definitely throwing the ball there, and he's another guy. But I'm going at guys you wanted deep sleepers. These are guys that I'm trying to think of guys who, from my experience, listen, there's some guys who play 3-4 years, 2-3 years. Look at last year, Mike Williams for the Chargers came out with 1,000-yard season, never did that before, and he was a top 10 pick. There's other guys that did that last year, Devontae Parker. Right. You get guys that you think can actually break out and not be a superstar, 1,400 yards. I'm not even talking Michael Thomas up that high. I'm talking guys who have struggled a little bit or haven't had the opportunity, haven't stayed healthy. Now is their chance. If healthy, if given the opportunity, they can push the buttons, or the buttons can be pushed for them, and they can be that guy. I do think that given a full season, staying healthy, first couple of years, I think he was raw, underdeveloped. He kind of developed a little bit over the years. He was injured at first, didn't even play his first year, barely. And then I think if he can put a full season together, I think he's a 1,000-yard receiver in that offense.
There's nobody else there. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, by default, right?
By default, everyone else is sleeping, and you know, what are you going to do? He's the guy.
What about Mims?
He's a rookie. I mean, I don't put too much stock in rookie wide receivers.
I know. It's going to take him a long time to get into the group.
I don't have the stats in front of me. I don't really care at this point, but how many rookie wide receivers really go out there and have 1,200 yards? Look at DJ Moore in his second year. He was a first-round pick. It took him a year to do it. It always said DK Metcalf this year to next year, AJ Brown this year to next year. Rookie wide receivers are very difficult to have a full year, you know, over 1,000 yards. It doesn't happen too often. It always takes guys. That's a tough position to, you know, translate to the pros for immediate success.
Right. And then you got Crowder, though. I mean, I don't know, man.
On the running back, right?
I'm going to stay away. How about this? I'm just going to stay away from everything Jets and just avoid all the question marks. It's very simple, guys. It's not, it doesn't have to be complicated for fantasy football,
You're talking guys that you stash deep late in the draft, last round, right? Last few
Yeah.
rounds that you're taking a chance on. This is called a gamble.
Yeah, but there's a couple of higher ceiling guys that I think we should stash that I like better. We're going to get into.
There's an old saying in football, sleepers sleep. The community, so most sleepers sleep, but these are guys that have a chance if the stars align that they could actually be good.
Yeah. All right, who else do you got here? I'm going to stay away from that guy though, that's for sure.
I'll give you another guy you'll probably stay away from, Anthony Miller for the Bears.
Yeah, Allen Robinson's the guy there, and they throw the ball to Cohen, they throw it to Montgomery. I'm not sold. They got the new what's his name, Cole Kmet or whatever his name is, a tight end. I don't know if he's going to catch any balls. But Miller, I don't know, man. He is a deep sleeper. I'll give you that. Like, I could see maybe a ceiling there, and maybe if Foles comes in. I mean, if Foles comes in, it's a different story. Before we talk about this guy, do you think Foles comes in? That's the big question. Yes?
Yeah, I do. I think Foles is going to come in, and I think Foles is going to be the man. The problem I see that you have to rewind for a second. Allen Robinson has only had 2,000-yard seasons in 6 years. Allen Robinson has only played 16 games 3 times in 6 years. Allen Robinson is not reliable or consistent. Allen Robinson is a good player. He's had 2 good years in 6 years. Allen Robinson is not a guy you can count on in the NFL on your football team.
Right.
So that's one thing you have to look at. The second thing is Anthony Miller's going into his 3rd year. Guys break out in their 2nd or 3rd year usually. Some guys it takes a little longer, like we just talked about Devontae Parker. But I really do think a guy like Anthony Miller, he was super talented coming out of Memphis. And I feel like that shitty situation with that horrible offense, the horrible coaching, I feel like he's the type of guy that is this is his year to take a chance. Cole Kmet is a rookie. I think they took Jimmy Graham, who's irrelevant at this point in life. I don't really care about the tight end, but back to your thing about Foles. I do think Nick Foles will be a quarterback that makes that team more consistent, not necessarily more explosive or much better, but more consistent.
Yeah, you know what? Anthony Miller, I'm looking at his targets, 85 targets. He was second in targets. He played the full 16 games, 52 receptions, 656 yards, 2 touchdowns. Again, Taylor Gabriel came in, got 4 touchdowns. He was targeted more in the red zone by the looks of it. Yeah. Riley Ridley, they had drafted him. He did nothing. What happened to Ridley? Only played like 5 games. He just did nothing. So, I mean, Miller's in a position here. He's got to step up.
Yeah, I mean, they bungled that Kevin White pick a few years back. I mean,
right. I remember that. He had a high feeling.
Yeah, well, they overdrafted him, but the Bears aren't somebody that you look at and say, oh, their offense has ever been that good. I mean, they've had like Matt Forte and some good players over the years, obviously. But they've just been a disaster recently. I think they're on the hot seat this year, the coach, GM as well. I think they're going to do whatever they can to win football games, and that's why Foles is going to get it, because he gives them a better chance for less error going out there. He's going to manage the game and he's not going to lose you as many football games as Trubisky, and that's why he'll probably win the job. The only way Trubisky gets that job is if he plays lights out and he actually you can see him reach that potential, but he's played a few years already and most people don't see it. I think, so I do think with Foles in there, if you look back to his time with the Eagles, he's going to throw the ball. I mean, he's definitely going to get Miller involved.
Yeah.
He's a
deep sleeper. He's not on my radar, but I definitely see if they had a better quarterback, I'd say, yeah. Like if you have Aaron Rodgers there, like if Aaron Rodgers ended up on the Bears this year, which is weird, division, right? That would be a conflict. I would say Miller. Yeah, but right now he's just not on my radar.
All right, let's go to a guy both you and I think we both like, Hunter Renfro.
Right.
We want to tell you about him.
Listen, the only thing is opportunity here. That's what it comes down to with the Las Vegas Raiders. It's about opportunity. And the fact of the matter is there's nobody else there. I'm not really sold on anyone else there. Last year, I mean, when you look at targets, he was actually the most targeted receiver. There were 71 targets, 4 touchdowns. I mean, he's the guy. They got Ruggs there. Ruggs is just going to, take the top off the defense, maybe, boom or bust kind of games. But, Renfro could be that guy, could be a PPR monster, get a lot of volume. Now, that goes back to the same question mark is Derek Carr. Like, I'm just not sold on him producing high-end fantasy receivers. And that's the issue I have with the whole situation. Derek Carr is just not a guy I like, period. That's what's turning me off of the situation.
besides the running back and the tight end position last year, I don't know, that's just last year, but like even when Amari Cooper was there, they just had trouble getting consistency out of their receiver position. And that's, I think, because the way Carr throws the ball locks in on certain targets. And now with Gruden, that offense there, I think he's going to spread it around. But I do think as a safety net, it's funny because Ruggs and him can both play in the slot, but Ruggs is more that put in the slot, that speed guy, spread the field, maybe like a poor man's Tyreek Hill. And he can play on the outside too. I don't know how Ruggs is going to translate as a rookie. I always, like I told you, I'd rather take a second-year guy over a rookie most times. But I really do think that this kid will be that good safety net. He'll be like, how those guys, like, I don't know, maybe Wayne Corbett back in the day, or these like slot guys, or these guys that aren't like the opposite of tight ends, but they're kind of like tight ends where you rely on them on 3rd and 5, 3rd and 7, 3rd and goal, 2nd and goal, to get those passes, those short passes. I think he's that type of guy. And I think Deshaun Watson used him really good in college, and I can see that translating this year. This is his 2nd year in the league. I think it's a big step up for him, and I think he will get the opportunity. But like you said, I would be worried. God knows what they're going to do. I mean, they got Tyrell Williams, who never really lived up. He had a good year a few years back at the Chargers, but I feel like this guy will evolve as one of the better players there. He's one of the harder workers from what I've heard, and I like him.
I look at history, Tom. So I'm looking back again. I told you Derek Carr's the issue. Back in 2016 and 2015, I'm looking at those 2 years as an example because Derek Carr did okay. We peaked target-wise. So he doesn't volume target a guy a lot. So Michael Crabtree peaked at 146 targets back in 2015. And in 2016, very similar, 145 targets, 89 receptions. He was their top receiver, right? Him and Cooper were like lined up. So I don't see a high ceiling for Renfro. That's the issue, and that's why I'm going to avoid him. I just don't see him getting that much volume, period.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, let's go to a guy who I think you like, N'Keal Harry for the Patriots.
You know what? I'm not sold on any Patriot, but here's the good news. There's a new quarterback in town. There's a new sheriff in town, and we don't know the ceiling of Jarrett Stidham. We just don't know the upside there. So I think it could be exciting here. I mean, you can't gauge Harry's performance based on last year or any wide receiver's performance based on last year because, Brady's not there. N'Keal Harry, I mean, he only played like 7 games, 24 targets, 12 receptions. He did get 2 receiving touchdowns, which is interesting. But again, Edelman was a top guy. He was a top guy getting targets, 153 targets there. He peaked, but that was Brady. New situation. Who's going to emerge? Now, I heard there is already a rapport, and let's double combo this with deep sleepers. Jacoby Myers as well. From what I'm hearing, talking to my Patriots guy, he told me that, Jacoby Myers and Stidham have that rapport. So either Jacoby or Harry, one of them could emerge and maybe a decline for Edelman. We don't know. But again, too much uncertainty due to the fact they spread the ball around and have pass catching running backs. So again, another issue with volume when you look at Harry, but definitely a deep sleeper with some ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's going to come out and say they don't have rapport now. That's the problem. You can't really believe a lot of things you hear coming out of these private workouts. I've talked to some people yesterday. And, some of the guys I don't even think Harry's working up there in New England. I think he was working in Houston. But everyone's going to say they're doing good. They're training good this offseason. They put on muscle. It's all, that's part of it. But the big part of it is how they come back, where they fit in the offense, and if Josh McDaniel wants to use him. So that's a tough offense. He's got to pick up that offense. And then there's a difference between having rapport off the field and having rapport on the field. And off the field, I mean, is, throwing the ball in the backyard or wherever they're throwing it. When you get on that field and you start throwing the ball and you start like it's 3rd and 12, it's about trust. You have to trust that wide receiver. And that's like I said with Pittsburgh, and Ben Roethlisberger is going to go right back to Juju this year because he trusts him and he knows where he's going to be. So I think Stidham's really got to start playing some games with some of these guys and start seeing if they're where they're supposed to be. I don't even think Myers, did he even have how many catches did he have last year?
Myers didn't do much. I mean, he played like 15 games, 41 targets, 26 receptions, 0 touchdowns.
Yeah. So guys like that, I think you treat all these guys as a rookie because they're so young that it's like you said, a new quarterback. You treat him as a rookie this year, and you just don't know what you're going to get out of them. Harry did not look impressive coming in last year, but like I said, receivers coming in their first year are never really a shoo-in for much.
Right.
So I would treat him more as a rookie. Not a fan over there either. We just have to see how it works in the preseason. And you see in training camp who Stidham really takes a lock to.
Yeah.
Locking into.
That's what we're waiting for.
Yeah. What about I mean, we just talked about the Steelers. I think you like Deontay Johnson.
Love him. I think the opportunity is there because I'm not sold on Juju being the true one. If that's the case and he sees double coverage, Deontay is going to be open. I'm not sold on Washington. Again, Washington's not a guy. I don't know. He's one of those guys, man. Like people think he's good, but he's not. He's just not good. Washington is not good, and I don't know when people are going to realize that Washington is not the guy. They got Deion King there. I think he got cut. I'm not sure what's going on. Is Deion King still there? I don't think he's
there, but I don't think he's too relevant.
I think they were looking at cutting him. Either way, Deontay, and they drafted Chase Claypool. I think Deontay and Claypool on the outside, Juju at slot. That's going to be the way it's going to look. And I think either Deontay or Claypool are going to emerge. So you're looking at deep wide receiver sleepers. I say just get both Deontay and Claypool. Put them on your bench. You're paying nothing for them. But that's if you avoid Juju. Do you want to pay a second or third or fourth round pick, depending on where he falls in your league, depending on how many people are in your league? Do you want to invest Juju? Or do you want to take a high upside gamble? We know Ben throws the ball a lot. There's going to be a ton of volume. So one of these guys is going to eat, whether it be Deontay or Claypool. Why not buy up all the stock? You're paying nothing for it. Stash both on the bench and boom, you got yourself a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2.
Yeah, see, here's the bottom line, Joe. You got to understand something. Ben likes to throw the ball. He likes to trust his guys. He's such an accurate quarterback, even though he does throw inaccurate passes and crazy interceptions at times. If you've watched him over the years, where he's put the ball to certain receivers is where only they can catch it. And there's not many quarterbacks that can do that. You can go back to all the crazy catches that Antonio Brown made on the sideline, and it's only where he could get it, but he's only going to throw it to those places if he trusts you, if he knows he can catch it. I think the only receiver he really has any trust for on this roster right now is Juju. So he's going to be the one by default, but I think having this better talent around him will allow them to play Juju in more of a strength position in the slot, like you just mentioned. And I think that's important because number one, Washington, there was a lot of high hopes for him. Him and Mason Rudolph were, they loved Mason Rudolph coming out of college. Washington, they wanted him to kind of like spread the field a little bit. Now, I think Washington, like you said, I'm not sold on him. I think he is what he is, maybe a 700-800 yard a year receiver, that type of player. I don't see too much upside. I see some big plays, some touchdowns out of him. Deontay Johnson, I don't know if the report is there with Ben. I think he's going to build it, and I can see him being a little bit erratic with him, but I think he'll be a good player in that offense. Claypool is another guy that you mentioned, and I think he's on your list that you like. I like him too, and I think eventually that will work because they for the Steelers offense to be successful and for them to use, say, Juju and be that every down type of guy and make those important catches, they need to spread the field. So I think it's going to come down, and Claypool's built for that. Maybe the second half of the season he picks it up, but I think it's whoever's going to be able to spread that field and create those mismatches. Because if you look at it over the years, that's the way they ran that offense. Then they'll get double coverage on one guy, another guy might draw the safety, and then I think even when Marcus Wheaton was there, he had these freaking crazy games for like 150, 200 yards sometimes. It's all about creating the mismatches in that offense.
I remember Marcus Wheaton. That guy,
he either had games in that offense because of what they had and what Ben created. So it's going to be a matter of who's able to stretch the field the most on that team and who's going to be the beneficiary of that. Deontay Johnson is better than the other guys to be a consistent beneficiary of that.
You gave me a good idea. It's funny. You said Claypool. So don't be a fool. Draft Chase Claypool. Does that kind of rhyme? Does that work?
It does.
That works. All right, let's move on. I like the upside of these guys. Try to draft them. Try to get one of these guys on your roster because Ben throws the ball a lot. Led in attempts in 2018, in attempts and in passing yards, over 5,100 plus passing yards, 600 plus attempts. This guy's crazy. He throws the ball. So someone's got to catch it, right?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a guy that's going to get the opportunity this year. Second round pick last year, Andy Isabella on the Cardinals. They're going to throw the lights out of the ball. He actually produced when he got some targets last year. For the Cardinals to succeed, I think Fitzgerald needs to take a step back. He only had 800 yards last year. His targets are going to go down. He's not explosive. You got to understand that Hopkins isn't super explosive. So like Fitzgerald has become a poor man's Hopkins, an 800-yard receiver. He's 30-something years old.
4 touchdowns last year. Nothing exciting.
He's not. He needs to be just that two receiver on the other side. I know they got Christian Kirk still, but they need Andy Isabella in the slot with his speed to stretch the field. And I mean, that's how you win ball games. A lot of times on offense, you need to stretch the field. You need to open up the field, and you can't just have like even with the way Texans did it with the unhealthy Will Fuller still didn't really deliver what he did in Miami when he used to catch some of those bombs. But you need to stretch the field and open up the field. And for the Cardinals to win football games, they need somebody to do that. Hopkins isn't that guy, even though he's, I think, he's a great talented receiver. Fitzgerald, he's past his prime. He's on the back nine, the back two, the back one of his career. Andy Isabella, I just don't know if he can reach. I mean, they took him over DK Metcalf, surprisingly.
Second round pick, man.
Yeah. So, but I think he's going to get the opportunity, and I think he's a guy that will get some big plays. It's just weird because I don't know. I feel like you said, though, some games he might get, 3 for 83 and a touchdown. Other games like 3 for 13, and then he might get 5 for 150. Then he might get 2 for 10. Like he looks like one of those kind of guys.
Listen, stay away from this entire offense for wide receivers completely. I'll tell you why. There's just not enough. There's too many mouths to feed. Bottom line, I'm glad you brought up Isabella because he's definitely worth mentioning, and he's definitely a deep, deep sleeper. But there's just not enough. There's just too many mouths to feed. They got Keyshawn Johnson, who's got some rapport with Kyler. They got Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, and now DeAndre Hopkins. That's another reason why I'm staying away from DeAndre Hopkins in the first round. Like, who drafts this guy in the first round? I mean, Larry Fitzgerald maxed out at 109 targets, and he was their wide receiver one. Kirk at 107. Combined between both those guys, only 7 receiving touchdowns. There's just not enough to make DeAndre Hopkins a wide receiver one. I'm going to stay away. And Isabella, again, worth mentioning. I just don't know if he's going to get enough. There's, again, a volume issue yet again.
Yeah, but I think you have to look at it from this perspective. I like Hopkins because I think he's going to take a lot of Fitzgerald's targets. He's taken over that role. So I think, and listen, I don't know if Kingsbury has the balls or can be this kind of coach to succeed. He needs to tell Fitzgerald, chill, you're getting like, a lot. How many targets did he get last year?
Who's this? Fitzgerald? 109.
I mean, he needs to get down to like 60, 70 targets because that's what his talent warrants at this point in his career.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious. In order for them to win football games, you put most of those targets to Hopkins because he's a lot better. Fitzgerald maybe even put better numbers with 30 less targets because he'll get single coverage on the outside. He'll catch some touchdowns, some third downs. And then you put Isabella in the slot, open it up the middle of the field. I mean, that's what you have to do if you're the Cardinals. You cannot rely on Larry Fitzgerald to win football games at this point in his career. Listen, he's great in the locker room. He's a great person, great character, great player his whole career, but he's not Larry Fitzgerald anymore.
Yeah, if you need a clutch catch or something, if you need a clutch catch or a certain play, maybe go to him. But yeah, special play. But he's been playing since 2004. I mean, think about what were you doing in 2004? Like, that's how long he's been on the field, this guy.
It's called end of college.
Crazy, man.
Listen, good for him, but I mean, you have to know your role when you start. And this is the problem. This is why a lot of guys later in their career, they struggle because you need to learn. Even when Michael Jordan played for the Wizards, he wasn't, he still averaged, I think, 20 points a game, but he wasn't Michael Jordan before. But even other guys, when they start playing, you don't think there's guys that could play another 3-4 years, but they're going to be bench players.
Right.
I don't want to relate to basketball, like those guys like Vince Carter, stuff like that. But in football, look at Frank Gore. I mean, he was a starter. He had monster seasons, good seasons. But now, you got to know your as you age.
McCoy as well, decline.
Well, McCoy's different. He still thinks he's good. And he was such a decline. He was inactive much games last year. He's a guy that needs to go to the closet and hang it up. Adrian Peterson actually can still play, and he seems to know his role.
Yeah, he knows.
You have to know your role if you're getting older in the game. If you do not know your role, you're a cancer to the team.
100%.
No, and then you're going to bitch in the locker room that you want the ball, you want this. No, Larry Fitzgerald, I don't think he's that kind of person. He seems like a leader. I mean, listen, no matter who you are, you're gonna understand that you don't have the talent to keep up with these guys that are younger than you. And it's not like a quarterback. Like, a quarterback can't really know his role. He's either the starter or he's not. Unless you want to be that guy. Like Joe Flacco knows he's a backup this year. Andy Dalton knows he's a backup. If Joe Flacco came to you and said, hey, and you interviewed him and he said, hey, I want to be a starter, there's such, you'd be like, Joe, that's not where you are. You're not. He can be a good backup for the next 3-4 years in the NFL, and I'd want him as my backup. I'd want Andy Dalton as my backup. They're going to come in and they're going to give you 2-2, 2-2, 2-4, 2-3, and they're not going to go 0-5 like Fowles, guys that were on the Jets last year. Some of these teams have no backup quarterbacks. You have to know your role in an offense. But here's the thing. The coach has to know, you have to respect the coach enough where the coach has to have the balls enough to say, hey, even though you're a Hall of Fame player, know your role. So the coach can't just force a guy who's past his prime and keep him in the lineup.
Yeah,
So,
egos though. Sometimes egos, the players won't allow them to take the back seat. That's the issue.
but in any sport that it can be, it's football. And in this case, with a young coach like Kingsbury, he's going to have to be a leader, not just a play caller, and that's what you're going to have to see here. To see if he's still got if he has that leadership ability to say, hey, this is what utilize Fitzgerald's strengths of what he is today, not what he was yesterday. Anyway,
Right.
let's go on to a guy called you like Jefferson. I don't know if you call him a deep sleeper. I think he's a good player from Minnesota. Go ahead.
I think he's just a sleeper in general. I mean, he's a rookie sleeper, but again, I like the upside there. I think he's got the speed. What he ran like a 4.43. I think he's there, and I think he's a plug and play, man, because at the end of the day, now Diggs is gone. So what does that free up? Now, Diggs had only 95 targets last year. So you're saying, okay, well, it doesn't, free up too much. I don't see the ceiling there. But understand, I think they just had a bad season all around throwing the ball. But if you look at the year before, Diggs had 150 targets and Thielen 113. So I think if they start throwing the ball more, it's going to be interesting. Now, if Cook holds out, maybe they do throw the ball more, which, Jefferson's a plug and play. You said no receivers really. You don't get excited about receivers in their rookie year. This is one of those guys that could actually be a plug and play right off the bat, or he could be a bench guy. Because again, it's hard to trust those rookie receivers, right? We saw Laquan Treadwell go in there and he had a lot of upside, a couple years ago, and he did nothing. So again, this year, the ceiling is there, plug and play. It could be right away, but it depends on the rapport that he has with our Cousins.
I'm curious to see how these LSU offensive players play. The quarterback, the running back, the receiver, the offensive coordinator in Carolina, because I'll tell you, that guy's about 30 years old. That guy has only been coaching for a few years. And that offensive coordinator, if he actually blows up this year in Carolina, he'll be a head coach in a year or two, hands down. He's going to be that next, I don't know, Sean McVay, Zach Taylor, that kind of guy. But back to this guy. One thing you got to look at, though, last year, Stephon Diggs had 94 targets?
Yeah.
He had 1,130 yards because his yards per reception were 17. He had more yards last year on less targets because they used him more efficiently.
Right.
He had I don't want to say off the field problems last year, but he was moaning and complaining that he wanted out, and they gave it to him. They traded him.
He wanted the ball more. He wanted the ball. He demands the ball. That's the nice thing I like about Diggs.
They used him last year, and they had a better season with him just spreading the ball and bigger plays, 17.9 yards of reception. That's remarkable. That's amazing.
Yep.
He did have less touchdowns, but his first 3 years, he had under 1,000 yards every single season. Then he finally flourished in 2018, with 1,000 yards, which isn't, I don't think 1,000 yards is great. I think it's good. And then last year was probably his best season, but he had some dynamic games. I mean, even in the playoffs, he had that remarkable catch. Remember a couple of years ago, it's the Saints. I think it was like the miracle they called it. But he's a good player, Diggs. I think Jefferson steps right in. I don't know if he can have. I don't know what kind of impact he can have as far as 1,100 yards, but I think he's going to step in and he's going to be a threat. Because
how about Mr. Chad Beebe? Beebe had the one reception for one target, 61 yards. Remember that? He had this big long play, and it's like
they don't have anybody else either.
Chad Beebe. Yeah, I'm not sold on him. That's a deep sleeper in a 30-person league or something.
And here's another thing you need to look at from Minnesota. Adam Thielen didn't have a good year last year. I think he's the guy that's going to be the guy that Cousins trusts more, obviously, have a rapport. But people need to understand that Adam Thielen, his first 2 years in the league, he didn't start, had 100 yards reception each year. Then he started 10 games, 967. He's a good receiver at 1,213. He's a really good receiver. Like, he's flourished into that. Last year he was injured, battled some concerns. So as long as he can get back up to what he was 2 years ago, he's going to be the guy Cousins relies on. Jefferson's going to be that guy that replaces Diggs. But I think he's probably a year before he gets those big numbers. But I think he can be that big play guy in that offense and replace Diggs. I think he does what he does what Diggs did in that offense. Just see how quickly he can pick it up at the NFL level and at that speed.
I don't want to draw this out too much since we're talking Vikings. Dalvin Cook holdout. What are your thoughts here? I mean, the guy's definitely not worth $13 million. Hasn't finished a season. I mean, why? What's going on here, man? This guy is delusional.
Well, listen, let me tell you something. If you were a running back, you'd want to hold out too. Running backs don't get paid that much anymore. Derrick Henry is the best running back in the NFL. Well, I don't think he was, but I mean, as far as rushing yards and whatever last year, and he barely says he's making $10 million on a franchise tender. That's the franchise tender. If you're that good, why would you even sign a running back unless they're super, super elite? If the franchise is $10 million, just play him for the next 2 years at $10 million if you really want the guy. But with that said, Dalvin Cook, I think he's a really good running back. Melvin Gordon was a similar situation last year. He thought his value was a lot higher. This guy's better than Melvin Gordon. But these guys think they're more valuable than they are, number one. Number two, you got to look at it from their perspective. Hey, my career is short. I want to get paid. I could go out there and get hurt. He's been hurt so many times. He's just trying to cash in. Now, I don't know if the dollar amount is reasonable that he's trying to cash in for. Like, you can't always believe what you hear from these people in the media because most people just guess. But I don't know for a fact what he's trying to get. Me personally, I think, you know, they drafted some insurance in the 3rd round last year, and they're not afraid to use this guy holding out. But you got to remember one thing: this isn't Le'Veon Bell holding out. If he holds out, it's gonna dip into his wallet. You can't hold. Le'Veon Bell wasn't under contract. He had the franchise tag in front of him. If you hold out while you're under contract, money comes out of your pocket. So most guys bluff when they're holding out like that.
Right.
Very few guys that will actually hold out because then they got, I don't know if it's like $14,000 a day or something like that, plus money for every preseason game. It's a crazy amount of money that you have to pay if you're holding out. So let's see if he puts his money where his mouth is, and come training camp at the end of July. It's one thing to say you're holding out now and actually do it in end of July when camp comes, because then you're going to have to be writing those checks. Even if you say, oh, I want an extra $500,000 to cover my fines, it's still money they would have gave you. It's still coming out of your pocket, no matter which way you look at it. But you can't blame Dalvin Cook. But on the other hand, I still think that he doesn't, you know, if you're a team, you have all the leverage with running backs. Like I said, Derrick Henry hasn't gotten a new deal, but Derrick Henry, pay him the franchise $10 million. Why are you going to pay Derrick Henry $15 million? We can just franchise him for 10.
Right.
And if most of these deals for NFL players are 2 to 3 years guaranteed. I'm not talking quarterbacks, even though it is for a lot for them. If you get a player and you offer him a 5-year deal, you always have an out after 2 or 3 years. The Jets with Le'Veon have an out after 2, and Le'Veon was a special talent coming out of Pittsburgh, even though he had that year off. But usually after 2 years after he signed the extension, gone. So why wouldn't you just franchise a guy for 2 years? The cap number is so low where it's $10 million. It's not a quarterback of 20 million or 30 million, whatever it is. And it's not a wide receiver of 18, 20 million, whatever it is. It's only $10 million. So I understand the signing bonus will prorate it on the cap, but $10 million, just play him a couple years under it. Just keep, it'll be a little higher next year and then whatever.
Listen, Dalvin Cook blew his load. That's the bottom line. He knows that he's going to get injured again because he's only, 4 games the first season, 11 games 2018, 14 games last season. I think he played, out of those 14 games, he missed half of 2 games there. So you could take another game off there. So 13 games last season. Listen, I'm not sold on this guy. He's just not that good. I think he's a product of the offense, period. Like Madison, you can plug him and play him just as good. I'm telling you right now.
I'm a product of the offense. What I will tell you is that he's important to that offense. Gary Kubiak's coming in to take that job. Gary Kubiak's a Super Bowl winning coach with the Denver Broncos, retired. Remember, I don't know if it was health or stress, whatever it was, or he was tired of it. Gary Kubiak was an offensive assistant last year. Stefanski left, took the job in Cleveland, right? Stefanski was in Cleveland, the QB coach. I think he was with Case Keenum. Case Keenum went to Washington. It's another name to keep an eye on, by the way. Case Keenum is supposedly eyeing for that job in Cleveland, from what I hear. Listen, Stefanski used him, but Gary Kubiak, I think he does that zone running stuff, doesn't he? He loves to run the ball. He's important to this team, and and Cook knows it. Gary Kubiak really loves the running back, the way he runs the offense. So I think it's really, I think he does that zone blocking, stuff like that. So he needs a running back that fits what he coaches. Zimmer, great coach, but he's a defensive coach. He's the head coach. They're counting on Kubiak's offense this year in Minnesota. So Kirk Cousins, I think the running game, I think he's important to that team this year. He's important to their success. I don't know how good Madison can step in. I think he's a good running back, but I think in order for the Vikings to actually dream of winning that division, which I think they can win the division, dream of winning the NFC, I mean, they lost both their corners. Their D took a hit last year. New receiver. I think Cook's important to that team. But like you said, if he goes somewhere else and is on the Bengals, I don't want to say the Bengals, but whatever team, is he going to be that good? I think he's a good running back. But should he be holding out or should he be making demands? Absolutely not.
All right, before we move on to, let's do one more receiver here. I don't want to drag this out too much here. We could talk about deep sleepers all day. Before we get into that, what do you think Dalvin Cook is going to get paid at the end of the day? If you know this, what do you think he'll sign? What's the minimum he'll sign? Do you think he'll accept 10 million?
I think he would accept 10 million, but I wouldn't pay him 10 million. I mean, look at the Devontae Freemans, all these guys that have a couple good years. I mean, he's had 1,100 yards last year in 14 games. Like you said, maybe call it 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're him, if you don't accept 10 million, you better go get your head examined.
Yep. Yep. But they said, I think there was an offer from what I heard under 10 million. He said no.
Yeah, they're probably, I said this before. I did another interview. I think they're offering 7 or 8 million. I think, I don't even know that. I'm just telling you reasonably from, inside my head, what I'm thinking, what he's worth is 7 or 8 million, probably like a 4-year, 5-year, $40 million. Like, it's weird because Gurley gets 3 years, 45 guaranteed in the first 3 years. I can see this guy getting maybe 15 million guaranteed in the first 2 years and then gone. See you later. Because his injury history, I wouldn't guarantee more than 2. You got to look at the guarantees, not just the per year, Joe. So you got to understand, how would you guarantee if you're giving him $7.5 million a year, right? For 4 years, that's $30 million. Would you guarantee 15 million of that or 21 of that? I'd rather guarantee 15 and get a year out of year 2.
Let's move on from Cook. I wouldn't give him a dime. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. He's going to be hurt by week 4. He blew his load last year. I watched the way he runs. He just runs to the outside half the time. He plays super safe. He just wanted that agreement. He's fighting for exactly. I'm calling it. I see things before they happen. I know how he was performing. He was on his last leg last year. I'm telling you.
Oh, he's good, but you're right. The injuries, I wouldn't pay him more than 7 or 8 million. Anyways, Let's move on. Last couple of guys. You like Michael? I mean, we got Michael Pittman, we got Hardman, we got Slayton, Rigor, Corey Davis. You want to talk about those guys? Go ahead.
Just rapid fire. Michael Pittman, love the upside. Rivers is throwing to him. He's going to throw a lot of volume to him. Consider grabbing him late. Who's the other guy? Slayton. I mean, he was a top receiver last year with the Giants. I mean, that could probably because I think Tate missed a couple games. Did he not? I think Tate missed a few games, but
Golden Tate.
Yeah,
he's getting there.
Yeah, I think he only played 11 games. So Slayton came in. He was a top target guy with 83 targets. Daniel Jones coming into his own improved O-line. Slayton's a guy to keep an eye on late. And Shepard just can't stay healthy, man. So I don't really trust Shepard. But all these guys, I mean, they're not all top tier guys, but any one of these guys could emerge. And I think Slayton's got the highest ceiling out of these guys,
Yeah, I don't think Slayton has elite wide receiver talent in him, but I think he can be a little better than he was last year. And I think he's better than Tate and more consistent than Tate and Shepard, like you said. But I don't think he's going to be a 1,200, 1,300 yard receiver, a yard a year receiver. I don't think he has that kind of talent. But I think he's a good player. I think they have 3 good, 3 average, above average wide receivers. Nobody spectacular on that team. Their best wide receiver is Evan Ingram if he can stay healthy.
Right. Yeah, he's got a high ceiling. So a couple more names here, just as honorable mentions.
Pittman, I like. I think he's going to be a great player there. Hardman, I think there's too many targets to go around. But I think he'll have some big games. And then you said Corey Davis. Well, Corey Davis.
I don't care for him, but he's a deep sleeper. Maybe he takes a step up this year. Who knows?
Yeah, I think I don't know if he can make that jump like Devontae Parker did. I think he might be a career 800 yard a year receiver, especially with Ryan Tannehill. You like him. I don't. I think in order for this team to succeed, they do have to throw the ball and not run the ball as much. They have to, they have to throw the ball. And I'm not a buyer in Corey Davis right now because of the situation around him or his talent.
All right, man, that's it. Those are some deep sleepers. Man, do we talk a lot, but a lot of insight and information here before you guys make that decision for those late round bench stashes, because sometimes those late round bench stashes could be the guys that take you up. Like last year, Shark was a late round guy. He did pretty damn well. You can get these sleepers late, man, and then give you a ton of value for fantasy football. So implement them in your fantasy football draft strategy for 2020.
I think in order for you to look at guys at this level, you have to monitor each team's preseason game and see who's playing better, see who's getting snaps, keep an eye on injuries. There's guys that we didn't talk about that. I mean, I know some guys that were undrafted rookies this year, 6th, 7th rounders that will actually get some playing time, be worthy. But this is what you have to, and we can talk about it later, Joe, during camp. During preseason games is when you start to get an eye, you start to make some calls, you start to see who is actually can be that deep sleeper that's emerging. So keep an eye on these guys during the preseason and then draft them if they start to, get a little PT, I guess.
Well, there you go, guys. Our Fire and Ice show. I forgot to introduce it as Fire and Ice at the beginning of the show. I should have put the logo up. That's what it is. That's what it is, the Fire and Ice. So I'm going to get more heated as the season goes because there's really no news right now, man. But as I hear stuff happening, you're going to hear more counselor being a little more fire here. So, all right, Tom, thanks for being on, man. Every Wednesday, Tom Santinello. And yeah, man, you got a new podcast as well. We should have introduced that at the beginning of the show. How do they find you?
Oh, yeah. I just started to do an Apple podcast, the Tom Santinello Show, where I'm focusing on football and some other topics. I'll be having guests on throughout the in the football industry, some former players, some insiders, some beat reporters, a little bit of everything. Just starting to talk about football right now, just bonus episodes until I do the training camp previews. And I'm going to start the YouTube channel next week and just start rolling and just doing football shows for now.
All right, Tom, thanks for being on. Check out his podcast. We'll see you next Wednesday. And guys, make sure you guys consider targeting some of these deep wide receiver fantasy football sleepers. Thanks for being on, Tom. And thanks, everybody. Smash thumbs up.
Enjoy the artwork.
We're out. No Odell. Talk soon. Bye-bye.